Hey everybody, this is Dylan Kramer, and I am coming to you today from my office. I am continuing my series of conversations with professionals in the real estate services business who have relevant information about what's going on in the way that we're dealing with the virus and how it's changing the way we're working together in the business. So today's guest is John Cialsis. John is a real estate appraiser, is a guy who really has his finger on the pulse of appraising, from the standpoint that unlike most appraisers who will normally just get in line and wait for lenders to send them business, John works through a variety of different channels in order to see generation of business from different sources, but that leads to an exposure in a way that I think is different and relevant for today. So John, welcome to the video.
Yeah, Dylan, thanks for having me. And I'll just introduce myself as well a little bit. Like I said, my name is John Cialsis. I'm a home appraiser, and our specialty is private appraisals, which include divorce, estate tax, private sales, and kind of the whole gamut of the private side. Most people know appraisers to be in the mortgage lending, whether it's for refinance or for purchases. So that's our specialty. And to your point, I think we do get a better sense of what's going on in the market because we're dealing with the end consumer or communicating with them much more than we do on the mortgage side.
That's fantastic. Just real briefly for everybody on the mortgage side, the way things will normally work when John says that you're dealing directly with the consumer is most mortgage companies have some version of what's called a panel, and basically appraisers asked to be part of that panel. Hey, send me some business. Mortgage companies will then turn around and send business out to that panel in some sort of random rotation. And basically everything is mortgage driven, whether people are buying or, as they are in this market more often, refinancing. That's how people will generate their business. So they get one type of client. John, talk a little bit about how you work a little differently and see multiple clients from different arenas.
Yeah, so we're definitely working differently than most folks. What you alluded to, we're kind of creating awareness that there are other types of appraisals people need on a regular basis that is required by various local and federal laws. So you'll need an appraisal if you're dividing assets for divorce, property tax appeals, if you have high taxes, which everybody in the last 3 years, everybody's taxes have increased 30%. And so those folks are looking to do that. And those are the folks that we're definitely, seeing and communicating with and just staying in touch of all the time. And so those are just to name a few, but there's a whole, kind of a whole variety of things.
Fantastic. One of the things I wanted to talk a little bit about is how the appraisal process is happening in today's market. One of the challenges that we're having, we have a wide variety of interesting challenges in the mortgage space, but they're really all under one of two umbrellas, which is one, oh my God, we're going gangbusters and we have a lot to do. How are we going to do it? And then the other one is, oh my God, in today's world with the virus and with the changes that's put between the stay-at-home orders and everything else, how are we going to figure out how to get this done? So from a busyness standpoint, are you seeing any uptick in appraisal activity just generally, either relative to the market? I know that since you're not in a normal lending space, are you in a space where people are trying to get to the issue relative to their home value, whether it's an uptick in activity relative to property taxes? Is it an uptick in activity relative to people trying to figure something else out, estate planning, divorces? Like, is there anything that's up from an activity standpoint?
The answer to that is no. Everything is down over 90%. So I kind of took a reading of the markets a few days ago at the first of the month, and so the statistics were very telling about the overall activity.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, people were feeling, but the actual statistics kind of really drive that home. And essentially is, I took stats from the entire Chicago area. And we looked at new listings, contract pendings, and closed sales over a period of 1 day, 14 days prior, and then 30 days prior. And so 30 days ago, essentially March 1st, we had about 1,500 new listings. On 3 days ago, on March 1st, we had about another 1,000 or so properties under contract, and then about another 1,000 or so closed properties.
Right.
As of April 1st, that was all down over 90%. We had about 80 new listings, 70 contracts pending on that day, and then maybe about 50 closed sales on that day. So everything's down over 90% minimum.
So 90% plus in the first few weeks, that's a real issue, obviously. But I think that from a safety standpoint, it puts people in a spot where there's not a lot of appraising going on. But if you are in a situation where you need to get an appraisal, and I think, John, that this is going to be the case. I don't think we're going to be down 90% for an extended period of time, right? I mean, at the end of the day, people will put their lives on hold for a period of time, but they won't do that for an extended period of time, right? At the end of the day, it's going to be September in 120 days, give or take. And we're going to be in a situation where people are going to want to be in their school districts. They're going to want to have moved from the city to the suburbs, or they're going to want to move from the grade school district to the high school district that they want, or whatever the case is. And September is going to be there, for example, regardless. And so they may be willing to put it on hold now, but they probably won't be for an extended period of time, assuming their employment stays the same and all that other stuff. So my question to you is, what are some things as people are discovering this video, whether it's, in early April as we're recording it, or it's as the months go on, that they can do to make sure that they don't disrupt the appraisal process and take as much safety precaution as possible in order to make sure an appraisal gets done correctly and gets done safely for everybody involved?
Yeah, so basically right now, most appraisers are reluctant to go out their properties for safety, their own safety, and obviously the safety of the occupants of any particular home. So, and so just recently, several of the GSEs have allowed alternative appraisals. Essentially, what that is, it's technically called a desktop appraisal.
Right.
And what that entails, it doesn't include a visit to the house. So it's kind of the process is similar in terms of the appraisal component, the valuation component of it, but the data collection component of it is very different now. So basically what we're doing at this time is we're not doing a visit, we're doing a phone interview.
Right.
That could be a phone interview, we're getting a description of the property, what kind of rooms you have on any particular level, what kind of flooring, what kind of bathrooms, kind of finishes in the bathroom, kitchen as well. When you had updates, what they were specifically. We're also we're arranging for the owner to take pictures of the interior and exterior, so several pictures.
Right.
Appraisers are probably going to want to see one or two pictures of each room, a minimum of, I would say probably three or four pictures of each bathroom, whether it's a full or half. Minimum, I would probably say minimum of 5 pictures in every kitchen. So appraisers are arranging for interior photos to be taken, exterior photos as well. So the front, the side, the garage, any exterior features like a deck or balcony, things along those lines. Also pictures of any updates, apparent updates that you can tell on a picture. And of course, any pictures of deferred maintenance, essentially something that would require immediate repair or physical deterioration, things that are worn but necessarily don't require immediate repair. So appraisers are arranging for that. Some appraisers, myself included, are also encouraging kind of a virtual walkthrough, whether it's via an iPhone or Skype or whatever that medium is going to be, that is capable from the occupant side. We'll do a walkthrough in addition to that. That way, there's a certain level of comfort that what the information that we're gathering is fairly accurate. So those are some of the things. We're also going to be relying on on prior listings of a property. So right now, all those listings that were on the market, they all got canceled. So if any of those come up for an appraisal, in the near future, we'll just pull that listing information and extract information from there as well. And so those are kind of the ways that our appraisers are doing the appraisal now, and the data collection component of it. Now you may think that, what's the cost of this? Is it going to be less? It's going to be more. Now, this is going to depend probably on your appraiser, but I think the amount of work is probably going to be about the same, maybe slightly less, because there is quite a bit of back and forth, because it gets piecemeal. The information is getting piecemeal to the appraiser. So
right. So there's really not less work involved just because you're not physically going to do a tour of the property. And I think, John, that's probably because, correct me if I'm wrong, you're in a situation where you're supplementing your own tour of the property with this other data gathering that relies on the consumer or the seller. I guess would not be the consumer in a regular real estate transaction, but requires that person to participate in the process. But you have to guide that and invest some time, energy, and effort in making sure that that walkthrough video looks good, that those pictures are at the right angle and show the things that are relevant to you in terms of determining value, right?
yeah, absolutely. Spot on.
Cool. So that's a great idea in terms of handling it, probably the majority of stuff that's coming your way. My other question is, what about the things that just absolutely have to get inspected, and now we're going to have to go to the physical property and make time for an actual tour by you, the appraiser? What are we going to do to try to manage that situation for everybody's safety?
Yeah, so that is a very good question, and the success of that is going to depend upon the number of occupants in any given home. So if you have 10 people living in a house, the success of that is going to reduce greatly. So but I am still going out to properties personally, but I'm going under essentially these guidelines. So what we're asking, first off, I want to find out what kind of property I'm going to. Is it a single family? Is it a condo? Is it a 4-unit apartment building? This isn't going to be a popular answer, but I'm probably not going out to 4-unit apartment building because there's way too many people to try to influence a certain behavior that we want to see when we're out there. So it's not likely going to happen in my case.
Okay. Are you finding, or are you hearing through the grapevine that that's kind of industry standard, right? That multi-unit properties are going to be more challenging just because you have more people to try to herd and control?
I haven't really heard it specifically about multis, but just my own logic says that that would probably be a fair thing to say. It would be a reasonable assumption to make that. When you have, especially when you're dealing with the tenants who may not want you there anyway,
Right.
So
yeah, I get that. Whether you're buying, selling, or refinancing, right? It doesn't matter which end of this transaction you're on and exactly what the transaction is. If you're going into my house, I'm a motivated person who's going to be like, tell me how to clean it. Tell me how to make space. Do you not want me here? Like, I can go drive around for 30 minutes while you do the tour of the house, right? But as soon as I have tenants, I got to get them on board with that agenda. Or worse, in the buy-sell situation, if I'm the seller, I got to get my tenants on board for somebody else, right? And so now all of a sudden, it becomes the proverbial herding cats situation. Maybe it's going to work out, maybe it's not. And you're telling me, for your business, you'd rather take a pass on that, and probably I could see where other appraisers would make that same decision based on what we're talking about and relative to the virus and everybody's health and safety.
Yeah, I think that would probably be the case, but assuming it's a single family home or a condominium, where you have kind of typical occupancy, anywhere from 1 to, let's say, 6 people per family. Basically, so we'll find out how many occupants are. So first thing we'll ask is anybody displaying any symptoms? Do they have a fever? Are they coughing? Are they sneezing? We're coming into allergy season now, so some of that the sneezing could be related to allergies, but it's still, it's still a reasonable concern. So we want to know. And so depending on what we hear, that's kind of a judgment call. So it just depends on what that's going to look like and how confident you feel that's not going to be an issue. The next thing that I would suggest to entice an appraiser to come to your property, if at all possible, arrange for the house to be empty.
Okay.
Very difficult with stay-at-home orders, but people are out taking walks during the day, and the
Sure.
appraiser is going to come out during the day. So I don't think it could be maybe difficult, especially if you have small kids, but not completely unreasonable to arrange for somebody to be out the house for about a half an hour period or whatever it might be. If that's not possible, they can arrange for, if the house is big enough, the appraiser can be on one end of the house while the occupants can be on another end of the house, and then you can just kind of switch when they need to switch to kind of prevent some of that stuff. Keep the social distance requirements of 6 foot minimum. Maybe you can't go for a walk, but maybe you can hang outside the house. If you have a garage, maybe hang out in your garage. Something along those lines. This is where the collaboration and creativity is going to really come into place. It's not really necessarily for me to dictate exactly what that's going to look like, keeping the distance. So I don't know if I would be very, very specific about that, but I'm open to suggestions, and if it makes sense for me entering, then I wouldn't have a problem to what that is. I think one of these ideas I didn't come from me, to be honest. I was out at a place a few days ago, and it was a condo, 2-level condo. He's like, okay, we'll be upstairs. Well, you come down here, and then when you're done, we'll switch. And I was like, perfect. It was a fantastic idea. We got the job done. I was there. I got to do whatever else I needed to. I also arranged for them to make sure everything was open, so all doors are open, light switches on, so I'm not touching as many things while I'm there. That way I'm not transmitting to them, and they're not transmitting things back to me.
Right, that's an everybody wins sort of thing, sure.
Yeah, so just make sure everything's open, doors open, lights on, cabinet doors, kitchen cabinet, and bath vanity doors are open, so we can just kind of see if there's any damage or anything along those lines. And that's basically what I would look like. I'm one of the ones who is I'm concerned, but I'm not concerned to the point where I'm going to be paralyzed by the concern. So I will still go out, but it's going to really depend. I would prefer to do a desktop. If I'm being honest, but I will go out in those situations that where it's unavoidable. I've been out to about 4 or 5 properties in the last week, so it's not a problem.
Okay, so you're very carefully vetting every opportunity to do business in this market from the standpoint of what are your safety concerns? Can you turn around and get this done from an automated standpoint? Go desktop in that situation rather than doing the tour, and then only going to see people who are able to work with you in terms of the tour, and then put you in a spot where you feel as safe as comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think at this point where we're at with the COVID-19 is that I think everybody is taking it serious now. And so everybody's on board
Right.
and cooperating. So I get the sense that people are still trying to do business as much as they possibly can. And so I think every single person that we've seen in the last week has been on board, and it really hasn't been an issue to this point. So,
Okay.
So you can still do business if you're looking to do business.
That makes sense. John, changing gears a little bit, I appreciate all the safety considerations and stuff that's going on. But you're in the appraisal business, and it's part of the real estate business, much like the mortgage business. A handful of other businesses all serve the real estate business. Property values have been going gangbusters for the last couple of years, generally in the Chicago market. What do you think is going to happen to values as a result of this virus situation?
I don't know. What I will say, what I will say is that I am optimistic. And I think when we had the crash in 2008, that kind of happened that was a slow decline over a period of a couple of years. And there was no government really wasn't reacting as fast. This time around, the activity stopped pretty much. It came to a screeching halt, essentially. But the government is proactive. There's stimulus packages that they're doing. There's all sorts of things, and that they're doing in terms of loans and things like that, small business loans and assistance for rent and mortgages and things along those lines. So I'm optimistic. I don't know what that's going to look like. I mean, it could. I mean, we can't rule out that there would be a decline, but I'm not saying at this time that there is a decline. At this time, really, it's not knowable. There isn't really much data out there to suggest that there's going to be decline. I think maybe the perception is that there will be, but
Right.
I think I need to be, we all need to be mindful of, let's see what happens before we start ringing that property value bells have gone down, before we see that. So I think at this time, it's just not something we can measure just yet. Once the order is lifted, once the order is lifted, we'll, maybe 30, 36 days out, we'll start seeing again, we'll start looking at those metrics again, new listing activity, contracts pending. Those are going to be some telling figures as to if there's going to be, what the direction that's going to look like.
Sure. But for now, wait and see. No way to tell one way or the other. And so I would argue for most people, should I be in the market is based on all the same things it was before everything ground to a screeching halt in the middle of March, which is if your lease is up, if it's time to be a homeowner and all that sort of stuff, it's probably going to still be time to press forward, assuming your savings and employment situations are basically the same once the order is lifted. And so until we know more, we have to assume it's all going to be fairly consistent. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. If you're one of those people that thinks that the market is going to decline and you're a seller, well, now's the time to try to sell it.
Right. I get that. It makes a lot of sense. John, talk to me about coming out of this market. And I think we got time for one or two more topics. But the topic number one I want to ask you about is, hey, you know what? If I'm thinking about selling my house, instead of just taking my real estate agent's word for it after we come out of this, might it be a good idea to actually get an appraisal in order to figure out where my selling price needs to be?
Yeah, thank you for that, Dylan. For sure. Obviously, this is going to seem like a self-serving response to that, but yeah, I think for sure it would be very beneficial for the cost of an appraisal. The appraisal is a few $100s, so the cost of knowing where you're at is, from my perspective, and is money well spent. But yeah, you definitely would want to get an appraisal done if you're thinking of selling in the near future. You want to get an appraisal done before you go to market to see where you're at, and then reevaluate your position at that time. I would imagine that that's going to be happening even on the lending side. Lending institutions are going to reassess the loans that they have and see what they're at. So
I definitely think that's part of it. I think the really big one is look, at the end of the day, I tell people this, and I think it's going to be really, really relevant after the order is lifted and we get back to kind of market as normal where people are trying to sell. And that is, there will probably be less buyers in the market as some people will choose to be more patient, let everything shake itself out. Some people have job situations that don't allow them to buy when they thought they were going to buy, or they want things to be more back to normal before they do. So less buyers. However, I also think that there will be people, and again, this is just my anecdotal opinion, who say we're absolutely selling. Like there wasn't enough space for the quarantine. It's absolutely time to move. I don't want to live here anymore, whatever the case is. So more inventory, less buyers means there's going to be price pressure. And I think that getting an appraisal and getting out for $400 or $500 and not having to stay in a house that you didn't sell because you overpriced it for an extra 2 or 3 months at $1,500 a month is money well spent. So I don't think you're being self-serving when you say that. I think there's a real market need to do that. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, thank you for that, for sure.
All right. John, anything else you'd like to turn around and cover from an appraisal or market condition standpoint? 25 minutes has flown by as we've talked here.
No, I think we kind of covered everything. I'll be taking continually taking a read of what we're seeing in terms of listings and things like that, like we have been. So we'll probably take one here in the next day or so. Let's see where we're at. If it's the same or about the same, or if there's been any meaningful change one way or the other. So we're going to be I'm going to be definitely looking at those statistics, and nothing more for me. But what you still could, people still could do now essentially is an appraisal, like an estate tax appraisal if you inherited a property. Very likely that those appraisals are going to have a date of value that was prior to the COVID-19. So those are going to be unaffected by the COVID environment essentially. So so people can continue to do those types of appraisals. Property tax appeals are still types of appraisals you can do because those values are from prior to.
Right, the data you're gathering was fixed in stone prior to that change, so you can very easily go access that data and get the comps and get everything figured out from a value standpoint at some point in the past prior to March 2020.
Prior to March 2020, yeah, absolutely. So definitely those folks, they would not be affected by any of it. So if they're interested, they're home and they have time on their hands and they're interested in kind of moving everything forward little by little, they'll benefit greatly from this downtime for sure.
Awesome. Well, John, I appreciate you taking a few minutes. I want to turn around and tell everybody here, you can find John's company on Facebook at facebook.com/Chicagoland Appraisals. There'll be a link somewhere around here for that. You can also give him a phone call, obviously check out his website. John does a great job marketing. So literally, if you just Google Chicagoland Appraisals, you'll find him. Other than that, if there's anything else, John, that you'd like to add?
I think we covered all of them. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Wish everybody, I guess, get rest while you can because it's going to be busy.
Absolutely. John, I appreciate making time today for this. Hopefully everybody found this valuable. Stay safe, and hopefully we'll visit on this again soon.
Sounds good. Take care.